So it's council table. It's April 2nd, 2025. It's amazing. Today we're going to talk about, in the short title is Vision to Victory. The subtitle would be, how do you measure your success in the journey to your victory? And I want to unpack a couple of things if y'all help me with this, because I want you to engage at a level that you feel like you're going to walk away with some tools and some things that are very helpful to you in your personal vision. Um, Let me first ask the question about vision. Could you describe what vision means to you? And I'll come back, kind of surround that with some other thought processes, but to kind of get us on the same page. What does vision mean to you? And I think what I'm going to ask you, each one of you need to respond. So, so whoever wants to go first.
Okay, I'll go first, Bill.
Yep.
So the first thing I thought of is what I see, right? The second thing I thought of is that I've been studying, I've been working with a book called Mind Control, and it talks about being able to have vision and vision in a way that you can you can see things that you want to have happen, or you can see things that and you can almost guide your actions and motivations in a way that help you attain what you can see. Another person in sales, when somebody said, you can't be it if you can't see it, and that's a vision type of thing. Can you sort of, in your mind, when you're contemplating, or thinking about the direction you want to go. Maybe there's something at work, or something in the family, or something with friends, and you want to put some direction to that. Can you concentrate on it enough to see it, to be able to be it and make it happen?
That's
You know, and so I think a vision, almost like a vision, like Jacob saw with the ladder. If you want to put it more in a biblical thing, what caused that vision? How did that happen? Um, you know, God talking to him, obviously, as we know from that story. But you know, that's kind of what I think of when you say vision.
I think God, that's powerful. I really like it. Jennifer, I'll go with you next, since I'm gonna go around on my screen anyway. Then Leah, then Heather.
I see it as this: you take a dream and just it's magnified. Um, you can be in a space, whether it's an event, whether it's your job or something that you're working on in that moment, but yet you can see where you want it to go. Uh, so just where you can see something large that you would like to happen or that could happen. And then from there, you set goals to get to that point to make it happen. So that's just, yeah, how I see that that vision.
Okay. Awesome. It adds the future context to just seeing, but it actually puts a time dimension to it.
Hmm.
Let's go with you, Leah.
Yeah, of course, Proverbs 29:18, right, is the biblical vision. Like, with no vision, the people perish. And I just have to believe that, I mean, the Lord knows us so well. He knows that we need to see something. We need to have, if I could say, that carrot being dangled in front of us to get us to move forward, unfortunately. But I feel like vision really aligns with God's word. It glorifies Jesus, right? It could even empower others, right? I feel like our vision should not just be about us, but it can be, right? Because we obviously work on ourselves first. But I also feel like it requires faith, right? It's like more than just me. It's working with the Holy Spirit. And I actually just read Colossians 1:6 this morning, and I really feel like this applies. Okay, so Colossians 1:6 is, which has come to you as it has also in all the world, and is bringing forth fruit, as it is also among you since the day you heard and knew the grace of God in truth. And I mean, it goes on, but it talks about God's will. And this is probably not the best version I just quickly pulled up here, but just that first chapter in Colossians really talking about doing God's will. Well, that's our vision. We've got to get God's will for our vision. God, what did you put me on earth for? What am I to do here? I've got to know God's will for me so it can be my vision, right? So I need his revelation. Lord, what is your revelation for me? What is your revelation for my marriage, for my kids? And that's going to bring forth fruit and truth and change. And it's going to basically give us strength to keep going when we don't want to get out of bed, when we're done, when we quit, right? I even feel like we should have visions for friendships. And I know I'm kind of like going real big vision to going little visions, but I feel like, Lord, what is this relationship? Give me a vision for this relationship, because we're going to be less disappointed. We're going to know why we're in this relationship, and we're going to know when it ends, right? I have a tendency to stay in relationships way too long. It's hard for me to let go. I just kind of hang on, even if we don't talk, and so just really learning, Lord, what is this relationship? Are we going to go in the trenches together, or are we just going to support one another for such and such time? So I do feel like we need visions for way more things than we're doing.
You're awesome. That's great. Heather, you want to add to this?
Yes, I think vision means purpose. I think when you have a vision, you have a purpose. That's the first word that came to mind. That you know your purpose, you know what you're doing, you know what to do, and you know how to do it, kind of thing. Okay, I think that's what it means to me.
You guys are awesome. I mean, seriously, this is really, really good. I felt like the Lord wanted to use the word vision, and just like y'all have captured, I think y'all have done a nice holistic in of it, because if I look at the dictionary, it says the faculty or state of being able to see, like Mike said, the ability to think about or plan the future with imagination and wisdom. So that incorporates the words that y'all are talking about from the scriptures. In the transformational leadership that we do, we try to get organizations, but we start with the people first, but the organizations to get what we call a VP MOSA. It's a vision, mission, purpose, and then the objectives, the strategies, and the action points that go with those. Some of the times the people say, well, what's a vision? What's the purpose? And then what's the mission statement? And those are really helpful if you kind of look at those in different categories. I, like you were saying, the ones on the call here, vision is something in a future orientation. And like Mike said, it's something that you see. The way I put it for myself is that, how do I want to see myself in the future? What we ask people to do often in the transformational leadership is say, if you want to really nail it and in the whole aspect of who you are in the future, what would you want people to say at your funeral? And I've just been through 3 funerals in the last month. And so I love it, because it's not that they passed away, but what I hear is the essence of the qualities of the person that passed. And that's what we want to see in our vision statement, at least for ourselves personally, but also, like you're saying, Heather, the purpose. What did God put you on this earth for? So I think y'all have laid a good foundation for the next. I'm going to ask 3 different questions that will help us move. And I'd like you to think about a vision that you have. And it could be, you can have multiple visions. I'll just put it that way. But one that you feel like it's most important for you right now in the space that God's got you. that you would say, this is my vision. And so here are the three questions that I have for you to dialogue with me on. The first one is, how big is your vision? And I'm not here to critique or punish, or, say, oh, your vision's too small, as you hear some people say. It's more to help you understand how to measure it, how to say, am I accomplishing it? And so that, how big is your vision? So it's just an honest question to yourself. Is it something you're going to, if it's a smaller vision, which is great, you may accomplish it today. I have a vision to get my car washed because all the pollen's on it. That's kind of a trivial way. Hopefully you got a bigger vision than that, but that's a part of the thing that I think we need to tackle first is, how big is your vision? Big, small, whatever, and that'll help us break it down if we need to. The second is, how clear is your vision? This one is one, and I'll share some from my own experience in a little bit. How we get a vision, but sometimes it's just not really clear. And I think, to Mike's point, you were quoting something about being able to see it. Mike, what was that quote that you said?
If you can't see it, you can't be it.
Yeah, if you can't see it, you can't be it. And I think Aristotle said this, I believe I got the right one, that he said you have a much better chance of hitting the target. We'll say we're bow and arrow. You have a much better chance of hitting the target if you can see it. And it sounds obvious, but it is. And so that's the second question I would ask you is, you get a vision, and I would just encourage us to have the flexibility to say, I got one, but I have no idea exactly what this thing is. And that's okay. That's the reason for the question. How clear is it? So I'd just like you to answer that as a part of number one, and the first question. And then the third question is, how real is the vision? And this one gets down to the practicalities that I feel like, if you can, define it, how big it is, what it is, that sort of thing, how clear it is it really becoming something you can see and be it, as Mike said. And then the third one, this real, is when it makes so much sense to you, you can begin to really, push forward. And that's where the measurement begins to happen, because you really feel like you own it and you're moving in it. So I'm just going to pick on Heather first, because I let her go last time. So Heather, you want to answer all three of those questions, or you can do them all at once? So how big is it? How clear is it? How real is it?
How big?
Yeah. And tell us what it is, if you can, if you can put it into words.
Yeah, I don't know how big it is. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it's small right now. I think I'm just beginning to see it. I don't know.
Can you describe it? Or do you
helping people. That's all I have. I know that's vague, but helping people, I guess.
Okay.
Helping people see God. Yeah.
Okay, so it's
kind of small, but
okay.
Yeah.
And it's somewhat clear just because it relates to people. That's what it seems like. It's a direct connect that you're helping people.
Yes. Yeah.
And then, have you seen it in action? Meaning, is it real?
I would say so. Yeah, I would say so. I would say not yet. I mean, it's somewhat real, but it's going to be real once I'm healed from this.
Mm-hmm.
Because what God has taught me through this, I'm going to be able to help other people.
Amen.
More. So, yeah.
And I'm glad you added the last part to that. That's part of the measurement. Once you get through, so that gives you a confidence that you are moving in the right direction, but you have something you need to measure as you get healed. That's part of the measurement. That's awesome.
Yes.
I think you did it. Thank you for sharing that. Leah, we'll go with you next.
I feel like I have so many. I'm like, okay, let's see which ones am I sharing. Let me get focused here. But I do feel like the Lord is giving me bigger visions. I don't know if we're faithful in the little, he gives you more, but I do feel like he's giving me some bigger visions right now, but yet they're still small, right? Like I know we're planting seeds all the time, and we just don't necessarily know how those seeds are going to grow. But I feel like, the Lord's like, start a Bible study. I have a huge desire to do and plan events, like family restoration events. I don't, know really what that looks like or where that is, but just kind of like those desires starting to stir in my heart. Something I've had for a really long time that actually I go back to a lot, especially when I'm working with people, is the Isaiah 61:1 about bringing healing to the brokenhearted. And that keeps me focused on what the Lord is doing and where he's moving. Um, so those are, just a couple of mine. I feel like I could definitely use help with getting them clearer, like what step am I on? What am I working on today? Those kind of things. So definitely, I feel like for being real, I don't know, sometimes I'll have some, just something more in front of me. Like I'll see someone else doing what I want to do. And I'm like, wow, this just became real. Like that actually seems easier than I was thinking, those kind of things. So, yeah.
Okay. We're going to come back and talk a little bit about each one of these and then move to another section. But Jennifer, you want to give it a shot?
Sure. Um, so I have several, like Leah, uh, but my biggest one, if I say overarching, is using the arts to build in different um, aspects of the arts to build relationships and help to care for people and to help people see that they are seen or
Mm.
known that they are seen. Um, how big is it? Oh, it feels pretty big. 'Cause I'd love to have a community center for the arts for all ages, with a lot of different things going on in them, to build skills and so it's layers to it, but I really don't know how big. I know it's so much bigger than what I could think of or what I can even see myself actually doing. It's so much larger than me. Um, how clear is it? At times it seems clear, but then at times it seems kind of foggy because I don't know which direction to go in, and how real is it? It's pretty real because a lot of the things that I do involves the arts. I mean, that's one of the things that I love. Um, and it's been a part of my life since I was a kid.
Wow.
So it's real, and I do things a little here and a little there, but in terms of like one cohesive thing and just seeing it all laid out, it's like here, there. So it's real, but kind of all over the place. So,
I understand. I'm a multitasker, or used to be, and then God's kind of said, "Okay, Bill." But yeah, multiple visions, and again, that's where it gets a little bit tricky to define vision because is it God vision? It's part of your dream, and how they
mm.
begin to intermesh. And time is the biggest help in that to usually begin to see it. Mike, I know you've moved to Ohio. That was part of your vision.
Yeah, yeah, interesting you say that because today we got a contract on our house in Pinehurst. So
Wow.
as I as I left the office, I'm doing some part-time work with a flooring company here, and I'm just coming home today. But we got a contract on the house, so now I was like, how do we pull this off? Because we're in a small studio apartment in Ohio, and we got all our furniture in the house and a lot of our clothes and belongings, and it's just starting to have all the pieces come together. Some kind of vision about how we can make that happen. That's the kind of thing I guess we go through when that every day something new comes up, right? And all of a sudden that came up, and that's part of the plan to get here. So it's pretty big and it's pretty real, and it's trying to make that happen and all that. So that move, and and everything. You know, got to get that picture together because there's some things I have to do to make it happen, right?
Yes.
And then there's some risk along the way too. There's some like, no way, no, what if we get everything moved out of the house and the day before the closing, the buyer backs out, and there we are. What ifs, and do they? How do we address that? With the contract, we got a meeting with the realtor too, so a conference call with them, and so that's one thing. But then, like you said, there's multitasking things too. Like this, so since I've been here with Carol, and over the last few years, and participating with the council table, I see and hear and talk to people. They write books. They do this. And Leah said something, I think, in a meeting a couple of weeks ago. She's thinking about that. I've been studying some stuff with C.S. Lewis, and one of the things that you know that we've been going through. Everyone has been involved with the political drama over the last year with the election, and now we got Trump back in, which I like, but when you go through that, and we have all these challenges in society with being a Christian, and how it impacts government, and how it impacts our relationships with other people, and all. One of the things that I've latched onto was a term called devilish propaganda. And I've only ever heard it, really in studying up about C.S. Lewis, and he wrote that in some of his writings. And I'm thinking about when as I'm exposed to things, what's devilish propaganda and what's true and what's false, and we get a lot of it, and right now, just like people, Christian nationalists and xenophobia, and all this. They use these general terms and try to describe them, and a lot of it truly is devilish propaganda that steering masses of people that don't really have faith or grounding in God. And I'm not as well versed as Leah giving us scriptures and things. It's one of my goals to have more authority in that way, but. So, how real is it to come up with a theme that becomes a way to reach people and help them understand that that might be unaware that there really is devilish propaganda out there that's causing them to go down the wrong path, and is it a way to make that a theme of a book or a podcast or how does it roll out? So how real is it? I don't know. I've taken a stab at writing an introduction to why I would even want to do it.
Wow, that's great.
to,
Great way
to
to
move
start.
along in that direction. But I really don't have I'm not an academic guy. Yeah,
Not sure we need academics at the moment. The academics are good, but I think we need people with a heart and soul that know what to do. I appreciate you sharing these. And again, the idea is to kind of percolate in your mind that there is a reality that God is real. There is a reality that you are in his family and he has a plan. I think Campus Crusade that God has a plan for you. When it comes to that reality, that reality meaning that you are God's child, I think what I would encourage in the vision statement is that he is partnering with you. And if you don't have a good concept of him as a father, sometimes that messes up the vision because we feel like we have to do it ourselves. It's maybe a subconscious concept. Maybe it's more real, meaning that some people don't think God really likes them, but he tolerates them, that sort of thing. I've had a number of friends like that it just, God didn't answer my prayer, therefore he must be too busy, or and literally people say that to me, that he's just too busy or doesn't really care, that somebody's more important or has more needs than him. I just want to encourage you, that is to have a true vision and be able to carry out the vision and to be able to measure it towards victory. Sonship and daughtership in that regard is key to the process. I would just put that down, that anytime that you feel frustrated and so forth, this might speak a little bit to Mike's thing about the devilish, would you call it, the devilish propaganda that Satan loves to get us off track of our vision by saying, you're not worthy, you don't count, you're not good enough, you're not, and I'm going to speak to that in just a second. But I just want to highlight the idea that God is on your side. God is your partner. He is your father, and we have the access to the scriptures, but more importantly, we have access to the Holy Spirit, that using Leah's point about Proverbs 29:18, without a vision, the people perish. But that's the role of the Holy Spirit, is to help us understand the revelations from God. So with that said, here's when I was praying yesterday, I wanted to give you two verses that, if nothing else for today, if you take away just bits and pieces and not a big to-do list, here are two verses that the Lord gave me that I when he spoke them to me, I just, oh yeah, that's good. But I just had to bring it back into center focus, that I think for those on the call today, and particularly for me, I have to understand this, because sometimes I feel like I'm not accomplishing enough or doing all that he wants me to do, and blah, blah, blah. And that's that devilish propaganda. Here are the two verses. Let's get back to it. Zechariah 4. I think it's the actual verse I want you to focus on. I think it's verse 10. I put 1 through 14. It's the story of Zechariah being given the duty, along with Zerubbabel, to rebuild the temple. And they were starting to rebuild the temple, and there was murmuring, complaining that it wasn't big enough. It wasn't like the old temple that was bigger. And the angel of the Lord speaks to him and says, do not despise the day of small beginnings. And I think all of us have shared, I'm in the midst of something, but I don't know what the bigger picture is. I'm not sure how it's all going to unfold. But this verse in Zechariah, I think, is very important to see that if God is giving you a task like rebuilding the temple, he's maybe giving Zerubbabel a vision of that, what it looks like, but the people around them don't see it yet. And they think you're just spending time doing things in your own strength and blah, 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 blah. But you have to stay focused regardless of what your peers and some of the things say. And that's a really hard place to be. That's that devilish propaganda coming in another direction that can really discourage us when we're focused on what we feel like God gave us a vision for. So Zechariah 4, and I just put 1 through 14. I think that verse that hits it on do not despise the day of small beginnings, I think is around 10 or 11. The other one that he highlighted to me was be faithful in little and you'll be faithful in much. I think Leah was referencing that. That's in Luke 16:10. And that's a verse that was given to me years and years ago. I think I was in college, and a pastor who actually was also the chaplain of the U.S. Senate at the time, when I met with him, and I was telling him a vision that I felt like the Lord had given me about something. And he said, and he wrote it down on his notepad, and he said, here, Bill, this is for you. And I look at that almost 50 years later, I guess it is 50 years later. And that verse at times will come back to me when I feel like I'm not really accomplishing the bigger vision, whatever, that if I'm just faithful as a good son to stay on track, guess who's happy? Daddy. And if I'm partnering, and it's taken me years to really appreciate the partnership of God in this process, because when I can't see it, like Mike's talking about, when I can't totally get what God's getting at, I can just stay faithful. Hey, today, if I've done what I felt like was in my heart to do today along the process, then I measure my success by being faithful. If that makes sense. And if you read Hebrews 11:6, it says, what is it? How does it go? Without faith, it's impossible to please God, because you have to believe that he exists and he's the rewarder of those who diligently seek him. So my measurement is for me in that, and if I'm seeking him daily, like it says in Matthew 6:33, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, then all your resources will be added. I have to come back to that. But again, if the real key to this vision thing is knowing who your true identity in Jesus, that you're a son and daughter of the King. Out of that flows the reality that everything is accessible for you, both the clarity and the vision that will come over time and the resources to do it. And your job is to stay positioned daily and saying, Lord, I don't see the big thing. I see what maybe today I can get. And if that's all God's giving you, that's all you do. So I'll stop there for a second. Am I making sense with those two verses? I felt like those were important that the Lord wanted me to share as a part of vision.
I'm like, it was really good. I was, as I was,
No, I'm sorry. I was laughing only because when I looked around the screen, it looked like all of you were frozen. And I was going, oh, maybe my video was stopped. But some of you were right. Anyway, sorry. I just had to laugh. I wasn't laughing at you. Go ahead.
that's
Sorry.
how good it was. We're like, our brains are processing what's really going on. No, I think that's amazing. Just the verses that you're bringing in, but it also brought up to me, like, how do we measure success? Like, I feel like you're kind of started maybe even opening a new can there, but like, how do you measure success? How do you measure that you have been faithful, right? Like,
Yes.
I don't know. There's something on that.
No, totally. And that's where we'll land the plane on some tools. And again, because this guy backed out, I had yesterday to kind of work on it some. And so I'm kind of glad there's only a few of you here today that you can partner with me to kind of break it apart and add it, whatever it is to, that you're getting in today. We'll jump to that in a minute, but let me give you a few examples from my own life before I get to the tools that I call it, the tools for measuring. And the key to that, again, the measuring is going to shift from, like, in transformational leadership, we have some tools for measuring how you're doing as an organization, how you're doing it, if you're growing in your leadership development and so forth. Those are pretty, I think, fundamental for most people. Like, if you have a job and your job is marketing, you probably ought to have skill sets for marketing, and they probably have some metrics that you have to, do. If you're a nurse, certain protocols you've got to do. So you got to meet those. Those are, if you want to say your vision is to be the greatest nurse, you're probably performing skills and things in that. That's absolutely part of vision. That's part of, but usually with embedded in that mission or the vision of you being a nurse or, being a marketing person or a salesperson, besides just being a good expert in your field, there's the qualities of the Christian faith that I think need to be manifest within that. And that's part of the vision. So when somebody, like, I've got a good friend, he says, and he's spoken on council table before. He's an architect. He's a custom home architect. He's designed homes that are probably like up in Pinehurst and stuff. They're typically $5 to $10 million homes. And they're, anyway, he's frustrated because his vision is similar to Heather's. He wants to fight for others. That's his term. She's saying help others. He wants to go fight and be like, get these people, moving in a kind of a army fashion. And it's a good thing. I mean, he's a really great guy. So don't let me exaggerate it with warrior and all this stuff. But he's frustrated because he says, I'm just drawing lines on paper. And so to him, in his vision statement of what he sees out in the future of him fighting for others, doesn't look like an architect. And I kept saying, I think you're being trained in your architectural thing, but also you're actually fighting for your family. Your measurement needs to be your family right now. Don't worry about the bigger picture yet. And so trying to pull it back and say, wait a minute, let's focus on something that's real and tangible and clear. And that is fight for your family, fight for yourself in this, meaning fight for your true identity as a son. Because I said, to get to be what the Lord's teaching me about father leader, you got to go through sonship, learn what that feels like in order to become a father leader, which has often a little bit larger impact and authority in the culture. But the point is how to keep focused on the day-to-day when you're reaching for the future. And that's a hard thing, but measuring with sonship and the qualities of that. So this we're going to move to in a minute. In my own life, when I was in a large commercial construction company, I'm looking at the time clock just to make sure I don't spend a lot of time on this. I was in a large corporate construction company. We built like the Atlanta Stadium, just to, that was kind of our type of thing. Hotels, hospitals, multi-use facilities. And I've built a hospital. I built, a large hotel for Marriott. And built a 30-story building over the MARTA trains here in Atlanta while they were active and stuff like that. So that was my background. And then, but I was getting more responsibilities, but kind of the same position. More, they were wanting to do quality programs. I had to do those at night and, all these other activities, but I still had to do my job along with these other extracurriculars. And I just didn't have, and I was traveling more. Matter of fact, we had a job up and I was in charge of a Pinehurst job with that Arnold, what's his name? Arnold Palmer was the designer of. And we started on it, and I was having to travel up there weekly and travel out to California. I was just like, okay, God, I can't do this anymore. And so I resigned in principle. And long story short, and part of it, when I resigned, I was going to get to a small company here in Atlanta that just did stuff in the Atlanta, geographic area. The owner of the company I left was a Christian, and he had clients. Billy Graham was going to build the Cove up in Asheville, North Carolina, and Jerry Falwell, he was friends of his and was going to do some athletic facilities for Jerry. And there was a large church here in Atlanta. And he said, Bill, why don't you run that division, and we'll call it basically a Christian division. We'll get Christian clients, and I'll get the work, and you administrate it. And I thought, wow, that's cool. I said, but I don't want to leave out of Atlanta. Can I just do it here? And he said, yeah, why don't you start your own company? Well, that was in October of that year. I went put my incorporation papers in, and by January, when my incorporation came out, he called me, and it was right around Christmas time. He said that the owner of the company that he was the CFO of had been diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's disease, and they were going to sell the company to a company in England. And that owner died in March of that year. They sold the company in April. And here I started my own company, had no work, no capital, nothing, but the vision I had. That was, I wanted to focus on my family, stay local. And so God says, hey, guess what? I got a job for you. Start your own company, and you won't have any clients. You don't have any money. You don't have any employees. And guess what? Ta-da, go get them. So I can share the stuff that happened over the next 10 years. I owned my own company for 20 years, and the Lord said, lay it down and start this new company. And I went, why do that? It's just a way of rock and roll. So my visions have been out there, but what it looked like, and I will share this, is the vision that he gave me to get me calibrated into the measurements. When I had started my own company, the Lord gave me this vision one time of me. He said, Bill, I want you to get on a boat, and that boat is your company. And I did. And it was like, in my mind, I was looking down, and my boat went off from the shore. But what I started doing was tracking along the shoreline. In other words, as I was doing that, I had balance and navigation. But what the shoreline represented was the previous companies I'd worked for and the competition. So I was basically mirroring, okay, whatever they did, I should be doing. I can't say that's necessarily wrong. This way most people do it. But for me, he said, quit doing that. After about 2 years of doing that, he said, turn your boat and go deep, which meant trust me. And so I began to do some things, just praying, asking how to market, how to do stuff. Company, revenue was still just kind of bumping along, barely making ends meet. And about the 5th year, where we hit a snag and some things really happened. And by the way, I started in the middle of a recession. 91, 92, 93 was recession years. So that was fun. And I can laugh now. My wife was not happy. That was a really pain to watch too, to watch her suffer. We had 4 kids, it was not easy. And in the 5th year, is that I'm out on the boat. He says, now I'm going to teach you to walk on water. Now, again, it's not, oh, and by the way, when he said, don't chart off the land, he said, I want you to chart off the stars, meaning get your direction from me. Don't look at man to get your direction. Again, you have to be careful here. It's just like if the doctor gives me a prescription, I mean to be diligent and say, Father, is this, but generally speaking, I should go with the protocol if I trust the doctor and he's giving me something. In other words, that's charting off the land. There's certain things we need to keep focused. But when you're looking for the true vision in your heart, what is it that you've made me to do and to be, Father? What is it? That's the key here. And when you find that he says, go deep, just trust me, that's when the metrics of measuring off of man's ways is not realistic here. And that's what I'm talking about in the theme for today. How do you measure for success? And that's where it begs of you to, one, be a son and a daughter, really get that. And when you feel you're not there, that measurement, am I a true good son? You got to go, okay, I don't feel it. I feel abandoned. I feel nervous. I feel weak. No, Lord, I'm a good son. I'm finding my measurements saying I feel a little alone or orphaned. If that's your measurement and you feel that, that's why measurement's good. What gets measured gets improved, as they say on Home Depot. That is a true statement. I think you say, oh, Father, forgive me. I feel like an orphan. I shouldn't. And you get back, and that's where measurements for success. If you can do that in the course of a day and get back on focus, you've had success. Now, the world's not going to tell you that. They're not going to use that measurement tool, the sonship tool. Does that make sense?
Can I comment on that a little bit?
Okay.
I think what Leah said too, and what you were saying too, success means different from the world and from God.
Totally.
Like God sees success way differently than the world. The world sees success as money and items, and the more amount of money you have, the more success. But God doesn't see success that way. So I think it's definitely different. So how the world sees success and how God sees it. So yeah,
that's a great distinction, and that's where we are in this. Can y'all think of any? Just take a moment to Heather or anybody. Where do you see in the Bible people having success, but not a worldly success? They accomplished something for God, but it may not have looked like a worldly success.
I think David, his life, I mean, he didn't always have money,
Mm-hmm.
He conquered the giant. That was success, but he didn't, well, I guess he did get money from that, but yeah.
No, that's still that's a great one. Because I think he was, if you looked at his peers, all his peers said, hey, you're out here just fussing around. You should be back tending sheep. You're not qualified for this, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But he went out there because I think he felt led of the Lord. I mean, you're right that he did. Apparently that I'd missed it for years that he actually wanted that the reward was he get a girl and he gets tax free or something.
Yes. He does have to pay taxes. Yeah.
So there were, and I can't deny that maybe those are some incentives for him. But anyway, somebody else with an example there.
I was thinking of John the Baptist. Like, come on, you need to live out in the middle of nowhere. You need to be weird. You need to be different, right? Like, you're set apart. But I just feel like he had such success. He did what the Father put in him to do,
Boy,
which was lead the way. But that would not look successful to anyone.
that's powerful.
Nope.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, probably one I thought was Paul, and just think of the things he went through and his journey, um, shipwrecks, imprisonment. You know, to the world, that wasn't success at all.
Mm.
You know, right? But he made a success out of everything.
It's a great word. I mean, I think about Paul sometimes. I mean, he was accomplishing the vision that he had to be a Pharisee, and he was hard after it. And then he gets the revelation, and then he had to completely flip his mind around. That's a great example.
I thought about Esther.
Okay.
I know it's easy to look at, oh, she became queen, but I mean, she was one. There were a lot of others, and even when she had to go to the king, she had to stop. Like, if she wasn't called, she could have been killed. So she didn't even have all of the leeway that people may have thought. But even in her being in the place where she had probably had everything at her fingers, there was still that underlying part of successful in being there at the right time
Mm.
and being able to, through the fast, and be there to stand up for the people so that they would be able to survive. So it was that one of, yes, the world can look at, oh,
Mm.
look, the queen, but underneath there, she was placed there
Mm.
for that
Mm.
time to be able to to save the people.
Mm. Amen. That's a great word. You know, and Jesus, when I think about him, apparently the culture and the Pharisees together, when they looked in their mind and vision of what Messiah would look like, it would be similar to King David. And I can't say that they were wrong in this, but because it said that, hey, he would be a king after the throne of David. And they saw a military kind of guy that Jesus would have been. In other words, one of their measurements. Well, if he's going to be the Messiah, he's going to come with a king position and anointing. He's going to have a sword in his hand. He's going to take over the Romans or whatever. I don't know what all was in their mind. And then he goes to the cross, and it was kind of like, what was that? I think that was troubling for a lot of the people who were, I'll say, on the periphery of wondering whether Jesus was the real Messiah or not, because their perspective was that he would have come with a sword and a fight. And therefore his success and has accomplished nothing. But we know just the reverse, and these are the hard parts that we're talking about today.
Can I jump in and say one thing real fast?
Yeah, I was going to, before you do, just to honor the time. I'm good to keep going. I just realized I love the discussion, but if you need to jump off, great. I just like to say that at the 1:30 time. So, go for it, Leah.
Just even as we're talking, I'm realizing that the kingdom measurement for success is obedience and faithfulness. And, God's like, well done, good and faithful. Right. And I just feel like, have you done what I asked? Have you been obedient? So I was like, I don't know, I'm feeling the Lord come out. I was like, this is so good.
That's perfect. Other thoughts on which she's sharing?
I think even in just listening just right now, when looking at vision, it's so easy to get caught up in, I'm not at that big whatever, even if you don't know the vision or even get frustrated and you know there's something with the vision, but you don't have it all laid out, it's easy to get caught up and distracted in that what you're not doing, what you haven't accomplished yet.
Mm-hmm.
But just in the obedience part of maybe this day it is talking to this one person I don't know, and um I see it, and even as you were talking, Bill, where you said that you started your company and right away people would think, oh great, like you're going to have all the things that you need, but it turns out that you didn't, but you started that company and you were obedient, and down the line the things came. But just being taking what we have and putting that to use, that's part of our vision. So even as we've just been sitting here, um, I've just been writing things down like, oh, I have this vision, and don't get caught up in I'm not at that point yet, but look at the day-to-day things, those little things that are so easy to look past and but can be such a significant part or step in the larger part of the vision.
It's a great word. I love it. I just applaud you. The people that I'm around, I'd say most people have a hard time getting into this framework that this is reality, that this sonship, being a kingdom minded person, whatever you want to describe, that says I'm all in on that side. And therefore the realities of measurements are like Matthew 6:33. Gosh, if I just am obedient and seek the kingdom, my partner God, my father God coming in to help, he will provide and give provision. It may not be immediate because he's teaching different things. And that's where I'm going to get when I would give you the tools to measure some of the things that I'm getting in the share. But that's so hard, but that's the place to be. And that's where I love the people that typically come on the council table. You guys get it. And to me, this is the extraordinary people that God is raising up around the earth right now that have this mindset, and they will be magnificent leaders because they will have this ability to just rest in God for their provision, for the the steps that they take every day. Jeannie, welcome.
Hi, thank you for letting me jump in on the later portion here.
No, this is awesome. We're gonna I'm a we're talking, as you know, about the ideas of how do you measure success, and it's hard to get away from the metrics of success, as we've talked about, whether it's money, position, status, titles, whatever. Those are part of the days that we live, in the sense of if you're going to be a nurse or sales or doctor, whatever your position is, you're going to have to move in those metrics that are defined in your position and do those well. But what we're discussing today is how do you get success from a kingdom mindset. And if all that you've discussed today, here are some things that I wrote down yesterday as I was reflecting on this. And I'll start off with the first one, which y'all were highlighting just now. In John 14-16, Jesus is talking to his disciples, and he's basically talking about, hey, we're one. As I'm one with the Father, we're one together. And he's speaking to them in love. And he says, if you love me, you obey me. And so to me, that is a tool of measurement, measuring your love and measure your obedience. And those come out of sonship. And so this is where I would call the sonship tool, that if you're staying obedient and you're staying in love with the Father, measure those on a daily basis. And those will tell you, I think, if you're feeling orphaned or alone or whatever, those are you say, oops, I'm not really staying in touch with this. I need to get back into that. And that'll help you stay focused. The second thing, a verse that I've always loved, is Ephesians 4:13. And it says, basically, grow up into the full stature of Jesus Christ. Again, nothing new here. That's what we're all supposed to do. But I find that most people, if we're supposed to be a 21-year-old Jesus, at the end of our life, or whatever the timeline it takes to get to the full stature of Jesus. I think most people stay in about the first grade because it's just too hard, because it calls for you to have to do things that are out of the norm. Like, like he was telling me, hey, start your own company, but I'm not going to start with any capital clients or whatever. And that's not easy when you got to feed your family. And I'm not tooting my own horn. I'm just thankful that I've gotten through it. But it was a great lesson for me to get away from a lot of my insecurity, fears, doubt, and unbelief. Those are part of the things he was training out of me, but that was the tool, was the love and obedience out of the sonship. The Ephesians 4:13, growing up to the full stature. I do feel that I can look back and say, yeah, I've grown a lot. And it's usually using the scriptures in that growth process. And here are some additional tools that I would say as a part of the Ephesians 4:13 would be out of Galatians 5:20, 22 to 24, I think it is, the fruit of the Spirit. Just use those as simple things. These are, in the business world, we call these soft skills. These are part of your character, your quality, your personality, whatever. But I think if they're fruits of the Spirit, they're the fruits of God, and therefore we want to manifest the kingdom. So just see how those are working for you on a daily basis. If you want to measure something, just say maybe those are some focus. Again, these are soft tools. They may not feel like they're progressing. It's like, hey, my vision is to, like Ann and I were talking about, we would love to have a farm one day and big barn. She wants a big barn and stuff. And there's going to be metrics to try to get there. There's money involved and blah, 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 blah. But part of our dream is going to showcase, how do we disciple others? How are we going to help others? And as a part of that, including our family. So fruit of the Spirit would be one of the measurement tools I would encourage. The armor of God. What is that? That's out of Ephesians 6. You'll read that. But on the helmet of salvation, these are, I'm saying they're tools, they're perspectives that you need to say, am I really believing that I'm saved? Do I really have a mindset like Romans 12:1-2, where it says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind? So they're just kind of ways to help keep you focused on a scriptural basis, but things that God has given us in the scriptures to measure ourselves by, to help us to grow into that Ephesians 4:13. From a spiritual gift standpoint, 1 Corinthians 12 is another one. Are you manifesting one or maybe more of those qualities of the Spirit? Again, these are dynamics that I think are incredibly important in the marketplace, because I think they're active in the marketplace if we let them. Satan's done that thing that Mike talked about, the devilish propaganda. When I've went through a little bit of seminary teaching and so forth, I learned about dispensation. And dispensation, one of the ways they talked about that is that after the first century, the gifts basically became non-existent. We didn't need them anymore, because the gift, the Spirit, and the manifestations of all the miracles were to demonstrate the power of God, to incorporate it all into the scriptures. So now the scripture is the only thing we need. and they were just saying, you got the Spirit inside you, but he doesn't, he's not really active today. I mean, I'm being a little bit childish in that, or childlike in that, but the point is, no, that's a lie. And I use the prophetic every day when I'm meeting people, I'm talking to people, I'm using it to magnify God, but also, how do I serve others in a more accurate way in the marketplace? So 1 Corinthians 12 is another place. Say, hey, Lord, which one of these gifts do you want me to highlight? Which one can I use? And you can watch yourself grow in that. I've been practicing the prophetic for years, and not to become like, whoo, I'm so big. And no, the more I can hear God's voice, probably the easier it's going to be to obey him. Does that make sense? And I'll just share this as a kind of a little, I don't know, you can say it's a little ribbon, you get for practicing something and becoming accomplished in it. I call them chocolate kisses every day, that if God kind of gives me like, hey, you did really good right there. And I go, ooh, pretty please, God, that's what we're talking about. That's another measurement. I find a fun fact for myself. And again, it's not about me. I'm just being a testimony here. The word Shema in Hebrew means to hear. Okay. Let's just use that as a measurement. Am I hearing God's voice? I think it's a big deal. He's been training me for years to do that. It's just something he's made me kind of, want to pursue as part of my vision of becoming the man of God he wants me to be. Well, the word Shema, I was looking up a few years ago. And I've been trained when I went to seminary, by the way, before I get to that, the punchline. Uh, I took Hebrew, and I took it from a professor that was really good in it. And he was able to give you the cultural aspect of the language of Hebrew. And he said, the Hebrew language is very relational driven. It's very God relation and to man and man to man meaning the generic. And he said that the words in Hebrew are often bigger and more significant than what they just read on the page. For example, the Greek to hear is like bing, bing, bing. I heard that. Bing, 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 just a noise. It's just a sound. And I heard it. And cool. In the Hebrew, I hear and I instantly obey. That's connected. There's a hearing and an action in the word. And he highlighted, this professor highlighted Deuteronomy 6:4. It says, Shema Israel, your God is one. It's like their national anthem. And so when they hear, O Israel, hear the word of God and do it, Israel. And that's what, you hear the prophets all the time. Hey, I gave you these commandments and you're not following them. You're hearing, but you're not obeying. Constantly, boom, 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 all through the Old Testament. And it just makes me thankful that he's given this. So here's the punchline, God's little kiss to me. The word Shema, which is that hear and obey, in the Hebrew, in Strong's Concordance, it's 8085. My cell phone ends in 8085. So here I am hearing 8085. I don't know. To me, it was just when I found out, I just laughed out loud. I said, God, you're so funny. But I think it was just another way, just saying, you keep practicing, Bill, you keep doing that. And that's why, like on the council table, I have a lot more confidence in my measurements that I've been pursuing, hearing and obeying, that I can say to you guys, hey, it's working for me. That's what most experts do, is, hey, I tried it, work. Here, you try it. And that's why I love the prophetic. So sorry to go too long in that, but I get a little chuckle out of it, but I think this is the way God rolls. And that's my little measurement for me, that am I hearing every day? Am I trying? Am I working towards it? Am I seeking the kingdom? The last one I put in here, which ties into this, it says, meditate on the scriptures, for they will highlight special areas for you to measure. In other words, maybe it's Esther. You saw something in Esther and you say, you know what? I love the way she did that. And you apply it to your life and say, okay, I think God's moving me to be like that. Does that make sense? And so you're going to find those little nuggets in scriptures that'll help you find measurements that'll help define you and refine you, so that you're not looking outward always to get your measurements from the culture. If I'm, like poll taking, the politicians are always poll taking, nothing necessarily wrong with it. But the ones that are really good leaders, they get an instinct on what to do. And then if the culture's in a certain way, they know how to react to the polls to do it. But I would just say, even in my own family, when I took off, and did this Blaine construction thing for years, there were times, like I've shared, that I went through downtimes and the money went, and when 9/11 hit, I lost everything, because the contracts I had had five contracts. There were 4 clients, and all of them were internationals, meaning they lived here in Atlanta. 2 were Korean, one was from Saudi Arabia, and one was from Iran. All of them were American, but the Iranian guy told me the first, right out of the shootout at 9/11, he says, they're going to profile me. I know this project we got. I know the banks. They're going to, because I'm from Iran, they're going to lock it down for a little bit. And sure enough, one by one, over a course of a month, each one of them called and said, hey, I got to put more money in. The banks want more. And my wife's going, I didn't ask for it. But if I measure myself on everything around me, I wouldn't be here today. And I just thank God for that he loved on me to work me through it. And so I don't know if I started off this way, but what we're talking about is simple: trust and obey. There's no other way, that sort of thing. But it ain't easy. And that's why a group like this, just coming together to talk about it, is so important. And so anyway, I'll end on that, but comments, feedback. So by the way, these tools, again, if they're helpful, I didn't put a lot. I did it yesterday. I was kind of working through it. It's not like an exhaustive thing. So please use it and move it in any direction you want to. So comments, feedback, thoughts, ideas.
These are great reminders to me of the things that we all do know and hold true. And um, I love that, you know, never realized it when I grew up as a little Baptist girl, and the pastor would, you know, always say a couple of key things that were just indwelled in my mind. Everybody, every Sunday, he would say, "All right, everybody, get up and go home happily maladjusted." And you know, that's the way it is. But you know, thank you for the good reminders of the scriptures and so forth. And you know, I know that the Lord, you know, gives me a lot of hymns and songs. You know that you know when I'm like, you know, they're out of the Word, or you know, some wonderful Christian wrote a song based on their own experiences, and
Mhm.
I just appreciate that so much. I never used to, I thought it was me talking. And then I just realized, no, Jeannie, that's God. He is talking to you through these words. And, you know, so thanks for the reminders about, you know, being in the scriptures, because sometimes we're too busy and we don't sit down with the word, but then he sure pours it in to me in different ways through those hymns or just through, you know, verses that I never realized that I had memorized, and right there in the head they are, and they just spill out at the right time. So yeah, it's very important, and appreciate the reminder so much that um, when things aren't exactly as we got plans, right? and and the Lord has plans, and you know, just the reminder that, you know, in the dysfunction of this world, in the challenges that we're being bombarded with, um, you know, he's still got the plan, you know, and he's executed it. And just my prayer today is for myself, and I'm sure for all of us, is, you know, that we just get an understanding, remember that peace, um, and you know, just walk it out, you know. And I just, you know, I just thought of you guys today, and I thought these are the people that I should be talking to today, because they get it. and thank you, you know, and I'm hoping, you know, we'll do some prayer and prophecy, because I'd really love to do that. Hadn't done it in a long time. And you know, just wanted to step in and, you know, just share encouragement to all of us, and receive it as well.
Amen. Thank you, Janie. Anybody else? Comments, thoughts?
I think, Bill, one of the things I wrote, you said earlier in the vision, God is partnering with me. And I added for myself, when I surrender my will,
Mm.
um, and take on because even if there's something we love to do, that might not be part of what we are supposed to be doing. So, and just everything that you shared and what everyone talked about today, just honed into me making sure I'm surrendering to do His will as He's leading me. So, thank you.
Yeah, and you're well, yeah, and what was coming to my mind as you were just saying that is, as Esther that you were talking about. She, it's so tender to me because she surrendered. You know, she was like, "Okay, I'm all in. You know, if I die, I die." You know, in other words, and there's a precious thing that comes to mind, and I don't know if this will hit you as much as it hits me. My daughter, when she was about 18 months, she had a rash on her bottom. You know, it's one of those irritating things, um, and she was small enough to I could put her in the sink to bathe her, and I put her, you know, put the water in, and it was warm enough for my hand, but not hot. And I put her in feet, and she's standing up. And I said, honey, you're going to have to sit. She says, no, daddy. She's just old enough to, talk a little bit. And, I have 4 kids and she was my only daughter. And so it was just really precious because I had a good connection with her. And so it hurt me to Becky said, honey, guess what? Bottom's got to go down in there if you're going to feel better. And after about 3 times, she says, no, daddy, no, daddy. And I said, yeah, I just need you to do it. And then you could just see her whole body language. She said, okay, daddy. And so it makes me cry still, because that's the tenderness I need to have. Even when it hurts or I think it's going to hurt, I have to do it. So that's what came to mind anyways. You're sharing. I go, wow, Jennifer, you're knocking it out of the park if you can be like Esther. Anybody else? Sorry. Okay. By the way, I forgot to mention one verse when I said meditate on the scriptures. This this isn't necessarily one that says like Joshua 1:9 will talk about meditate on the word day and night, and you'll be prosperous and a good success. And that's a great word. I would put that verse right in there. But what came to mind yesterday was Philippians 4, 4 through 9. And what that is showcasing in that particular area of the scripture is it says, when you're anxious, when you're worried about it, particularly say you're trying to accomplish your vision, what I love about that one, it says, come to the Lord. And my vision, when I think of this verse, I think of coming before the Lord, and there's this altar in front of me. And I go, excuse me, and whatever my burden is or my anxiousness or whatever I'm thinking about that needs an answer, he says, go put it on the altar. In other words, give it to him. Mm-hmm. And it says that the God of peace will then come into my heart. In other words, if I really do it, I really will. I can share testimony after testimony where that happened in my past, where I just said, okay, God, I can't get there. I've got to get this off of my chest. And I totally give it to you. You'll know it when you get that peace. And then what I loved after that was, a lot of us, if you're frustrated, angry, you don't know how to deal with this thing, you finally get it on the altar and you get peace. Your mind might be too busy or free, just like it's kind of, anxious still, maybe a little bit, the peace is there, but you're just like, can't think clearly about what to do next. And the rest of that verse says, then your job, my job, is to do whatever's honorable, whatever's right, whatever's just, whatever's, there's about 5 or 6 little things in there that just says basically be a person of integrity and Christ-like. But it is helpful to have those little things like just do whatever's honorable, do whatever's right. And what the vision that I had in that was that it releases the presence of God to go out in front of me to accomplish the very thing I put on the altar. It doesn't necessarily say it that way in the scriptures, but it says, the first it says the peace of God will come into your heart. Then it says the God of peace will help you. And I just envisioned him like, because I put it on the altar and gave it back to him, he says, thanks, I got it. Boom, I'm gonna send angels or whatever else. And the God of peace now is in my partnership role is out there running. That's why I like that verse in this particular area when you, because a lot of us we come to the Lord saying, Lord, I don't know what to do with the next step. And that's a helpful one along with Joshua 1:9. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I forgot to mention those two. Okay. If nothing else, I'll leave it one more second. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we go to prayer? Okay, I'll stop the recording. Wherever that is.